Jimmy, what are some of the biggest challenges that we find in our area? Installing ductless systems and things like brownstones and triple deckers, multifamily homes that we see a lot of in the Boston area.
Yeah, I see this every day actually. Uh, a couple of challenges that I see, first and foremost, the heights. Some of those brownstones could be 6 stories tall. Uh, we got to get guys to the location. It's impossible to get a guy at that height on a ladder. So the height is really a challenge. Um, do we have units above that unit? You know what I mean? If we're going to do inside pipe work, if is it rooftop, that's pretty straightforward. We just go through the roof and put a condenser. But when we're squished in between or pancaked in between other levels, that gets very challenging. So I'd say height is one of the hiccups. Um, the other one's definitely electric capability of the panel. We see a lot of these buildings undersized for electrical. Electrical is very important for what we do because we obviously operate from it. Um, those are the two heavy hitters that I would look at immediately as soon as I look at anything beyond two levels in any type of multifamily or brownstone
How
unit.
do you handle outdoor unit placement when there's, often no space? Even if you're not dealing with 5 or 6 stories, maybe you have, very little yard, and maybe the neighbors are really close, and you want to kind of try to keep it as quiet as possible for the neighbors. What are some of the issues that you deal with there?
Yeah, we see this again every day. Somerville, Cambridge, Arlington areas. Um, there's a way. We just have to find it. Whether it's on the roof, we bring in a crane, we bring in roofers, we bring everything with us. Alleyways, we have to be by code. We kind of have to be careful with that one because of fire escapes and certain codes there. But we can walk you through all of that. Um, Decks, there's definitely options. It just, some of these houses are very, very tight, very close together, so we really have to look at it on a one-to-one basis, but that's typically what we see.
Can you mount an outdoor unit on a bracket that's like against the wall, 1 or 2 stories up, or something like that?
We can, yeah, alleyways, we've done it, even on roofs where there's a little peak of a, adjacent building or something like that, but the wall brackets are great. Yep.
In older homes, of which of course we see a lot of in the area as well, what are some of the things that surprise you most? When you inspect the home and you take a look at what you're dealing with.
Yeah, again, a heavy hitter there is the electrical. They're undersized. I don't know. Obviously, they didn't do electrical load calculations back in the day, but we see these multifamily homes with like 60 amps going to each unit. They're just way undersized. Not much we could do with that as it sits. We have to do upgrades there. So I'd say that's really first and foremost because we really can't do much until that's dealt with. Um, and then getting into when we actually can do the job, I'd say the plaster and horsehair, the old walls, the old way that they used to build the buildings, thick, heavy beams. We just don't know until we open it up and see. Um, Especially like somebody like myself, I've been in the construction industry my whole life. I mean, my first job was working for a framer down the street, so I've seen it all. Um, some of these buildings even surprise me with what we find in the walls and how they carry the weight or the beam spread that we typically wouldn't see in normal construction. So there's always a surprise with the older buildings.
What are some smart strategies for line set routing and aesthetics when maybe homeowners come to you and they say, "Yeah, I just don't want to have all those that visible conduit everywhere and have lines all running on the outside of my house and kind of ruining the aesthetics of my home."
Yeah, I simple answer, I don't either. I'm one of the people that they'll have in the house that is probably more picky than them. I am an aesthetic freak. I do a complete detailed design for every one of my jobs. Homeowners can see exactly what I'm going to do. I get very intense with it. I'll do inside pipe chases. I'll use closets to hide pipes. We'll build soffits. There's always a way. In the taller buildings, we have to, right? There's no way to get a guy 50 feet up on a ladder to run a pipe out the side of the building. So it's all inside work. We use ceilings. We come across ceilings. Yeah, we get pretty involved with hiding line sets.
How do you approach multi-unit buildings? Is it one system per unit, or are there shared ways to have one system working with multiple units, or and how do you meter that if it's maybe a situation where you have different apartments or condos or something like that. What are some of the issues when you're dealing with multi-unit buildings?
Yeah, that's the issue right there you just talked about. So the meter is everything. We really want to be on its own electric meter, its own panel. Nobody wants to pay for somebody else to heat and cool their home, and totally get it. Nor would I. Um, so we definitely want to be one system per residence, right? And to do that, we really need one meter or electric panel per residence, and that's very typical. We typically see that. Sometimes there's one gas meter, maybe running one huge boiler for the building. That's pretty typical, but it's very rare that we would see one electric account for the whole building. With that said, we do see those electric, meters and panels being undersized, but they at least have them to the house. So that would definitely be the recommendation to do, one per home or one per unit is what I would absolutely recommend.
Do you find yourself working with building owners who maybe own all of the units in a building, and they want to do a conversion where they're replacing all of the heating and air conditioning and for the whole entire building at once? And how does that work?
We see this all the time, and so it's different with every tenant and landlord, right? Those goals and expectations, those are all talked about. Um, some landlords want us to just do, like we just talked about, one system for the whole building. And, my concern with that would be, well, what if the house sells, right? What if it's not the situation that you're in now and it sells? We see a lot of, my mom lives downstairs and I live upstairs. We share the bill. It doesn't matter. Great. But what happens in the future if that house sells? Buyers are going to definitely want that separated. So, we see it all, everything in between, but it's recommended house per house. It's really different, every house that we look at. But again, definitely separate systems is what I would recommend per separate meters is the way to go.
If someone's living now in maybe Cambridge or Somerville, one of these places that has a lot of these types of multifamily dwellings, what should they do now if they're thinking about getting a heat pump in the future? Are there things that they should be working on now to make that heat pump installation easier or cheaper?
Yeah. Again, that's I'm in that area every single day. Cambridge, Arlington, Somerville. Some of these towns and cities can be very strict with permitting. So I would tell homeowners to just keep that in mind. They call us in the middle of the summer. Everybody's hot and wants AC tomorrow, and love to roll my guys, but it's like takes 4 to 6 weeks to pull a permit to do things proper. So a lot of homeowners aren't really aware of that. It's really, really different city to city how that permitting process works. But those three towns or cities are heavy hitters for long permit applications. And again, we have the office staff, and we'll file and we'll pull all those permits. But once we do that, the ball's in their court, and we just have to kind of sit and wait. But I would say definitely think about that, pulling permits in a timely manner, opposed to when you want to get the work done. Um, if a home's under construction, think about putting pipe chases, or have somebody, a professional HVAC technician like myself, come out, kind of talk about, hey, maybe we can bury a pipe here, or if you want to hide these pipes, we kind of got to do X, Y, Z now before that wall gets buttoned up. Things like that to think about. I would recommend.